Good evening. I'm Abby Phillip in New York. Let's get right to what America is talking about. An inconvenient truth. Tonight, Joe Biden's American people straight, explaining why he went back on his word and pardoned his son. The president saying in a statement that justice, a verdict, by the way, that a jury rendered of Hunter Biden's guilt, wasn't really justice at all. For my entire career, Joe Biden says, I have followed a simple principle. Just tell the American people the truth. They'll be fair-minded. Here's the truth. I believe in the justice system, but I have wrestled with this. I also believe raw politics has infected this process, and it led to a miscarriage of justice. Now, that Joe Biden sounds very different from this Joe Biden.
Let me ask you, will you accept the jury's outcome, their verdict, no matter what it is?
Yes.
And have you ruled out a pardon for your son?
Yes. I am satisfied that I'm not going to do anything. I said I abide by the jury decision. I will do that, and I will not pardon him.
Joining us now in our fifth seat, CNN legal analyst Elliot Williams. He was a former Deputy Assistant Attorney General in the Obama administration. It is surprising to me to hear that statement from Joe Biden got through the White House, where he talks repeatedly about telling the truth. And then, as you saw, we played the clip where he categorically said he had ruled it out. And now this?
Yeah, no, Abby, I really think the bigger problem here is the president saying on the record multiple times that he was not going to issue this pardon, having Karine Jean-Pierre, the White House press secretary, say on the record multiple times that the pardon wasn't going to happen. Now, look, to step back, the pardon power is probably the least restrained power that presidents of the United States have. They have all pardoned people in an icky way. It's, we can even say it's probably the ickiest of the powers the president has. Literally, Bill Clinton, George H.W. Bush, everybody has issued at least one pardon or two that people, this is now becoming that one. It's a perfectly plausible. The problem was that he said he wasn't silent on.
And not only that, today, we're going to keep this option open, but they had a meeting, they coordinated the lie, I guess for political purposes, and now that he's leaving office, he is going back on what he told the American people. This isn't simply changing your mind. This is just fulfilling what you always intended to do. No Republican is shocked that he is doing this. What I am shocked at is the duplicity of the President of the United States and his top aides to come together and form this lie and stick to it this entire time. We all knew it was ridiculous, and now the American people are seeing what a disgrace he really is.
I think it's incredibly rich to have you say that the people got together and they were duplicitous and they created a lie.
NBC News said it.
I'm saying they created a lie because, honestly, what the other side has been saying for years, what you guys ran on for president, was multiple lies. I mean, if Eric Holder said it right, I think. He said if Hunter's name was Joe Smith, this case would probably have never even gone to trial, right? That it was always a political witch
Justice
hunt.
Department brought the
and
case?
It was always...
But Lee, wasn't, to Scott's point, I mean, wasn't it a lie? I mean, you can defend it, but wasn't it a lie that he was not going to pardon him?
No, I believe the circumstances have changed. I think that we now have a president coming into office who's talking about firing squads, who's talking about running people around the country and making sure that everyone who's his enemy is going to be punished. And Hunter Biden lied about his drug use on a government forum when he was buying a gun. And he failed to file and pay taxes when he was a drug addict. He paid back those taxes with interest. Donald Trump himself was indicted for 17 counts of criminal tax fraud, more than Hunter, and he's going to be the president of the United States.
11 years.
So
you're missing a few things here. 11 years, full and unconditional pardon. The laptop, on his laptop, there's been studies that show that a study that showed that allegedly there were hundreds of crimes. Drugs,
allegedly
sex. Hold on a second. You didn't do that study, right? That study was done.
But I think this is the problem. You're saying no, but I know, but I think this is the problem. You're saying alleged crimes.
Let me finish my point.
Finish real quick, and then
let me before you filibuster. The reality is a full and unconditional pardon back to what was it, January 2014. Just when, of course, he joined the board of Burisma. So, in my opinion, I think you'll see more pardons. I think you'll see more pardons that are actually tied to some of the things that potentially show that Joe Biden benefited from monies that were coming.
Here's where you're losing me.
Why would I lose you?
No. Here's where you're losing me.
Why would I lose you?
Because
it's established fact.
The Trump administration had an opportunity to investigate it. They could not verify the things that you're alluding to.
They verified.
Wait, they tried to, and he got impeached over it. They impeached Donald Trump over the investigation that Hunter Biden has now gotten a pardon for.
You don't think, you really think that after all this time, James Comer led an investigation, Donald Trump's Justice Department led an investigation, none of the things that you are talking about have been charged.
Hold on a second.
He was charged with things, and that's what he was charged with.
So he was charged because his name is Hunter Biden, not because his name is Hunter Smith or Hunter Jones. This is the Republican Party targeting the son of the president.
Who runs the Justice Department?
Period. End of story.
Who runs the Justice Department
He pardoned
today?
his son, one, because it was a witch hunt to begin with. Two,
I am so shocked to hear you use the term witch hunt, Congressman.
Two,
can we just establish a fact?
Hold on, let me finish. It was a witch hunt to begin with. That's why he pardoned his son. Secondly, it's his son. He's his dad. He's going to protect him. Third, we have Donald Trump coming into office, nominating people like Kash Patel to lead the FBI.
Good.
This is an entirely new reality that the American people are dealing with. He needs to protect his son. Now, let me say this. Let me add one thing. Don't stop at Hunter Biden.
Thank you.
Pardon the 40 people who are on death row right now to get them off of death row, number one. Number two, pardon the 3,000 people who are in federal jail for trumped-up marijuana charges, pardon them as well so they can get back to their communities and contribute.
But there's two missing facts here,
Let me just address this, because I think this is one of the witch hunt, undermining the very Justice Department that this president leads, basically using Trump's language, which he has used to malign law enforcement during his presidency and after. Two wrongs don't make a right. I mean, is that not a principle anymore?
That is a principle, but when your son is clearly being targeted by another party for political reasons, and they will continue to target him and others with someone like Kash Patel and this president being in place, the Republican Party and Donald Trump, they forget norms, forget rules. They are changing the game as we play it. This is who they are.
Just a quick point of fact. Just a quick point of fact.
I have one, too.
Just a quick point of fact.
2 points.
The Department of Justice investigations, indictments into Hunter Biden, this has nothing to do with the Republican Party. They don't run the Justice Department. The Justice Department, as you might know, since you had been in the government at one time before you lost your race this year, is an agency of the executive branch. The Attorney General is appointed by the president. This is the Biden administration investigating, charging, and ultimately finding conviction of Hunter Biden. The Republican Party runs no investigation. This is an official DOJ action, is it not?
Well, look.
Just say yes. It's
No,
okay.
Scott. Let me finish, please. I think you're both using hyped up rhetoric, and I think two things can be true. It's unlawful conduct and charged conduct. I'm not going to call it a witch hunt. Now, based on who is charged for the kind of filing offense that happens here. I mean, you're talking about hundreds of thousands of people who lie on applications or are denied their applications and are not charged with crimes. Now, I'm not going to call that a witch hunt. I'm saying that the high-profile nature of the crime made it far more likely that he was charged here. This was, we could call them trumped-up charges. We can call it aggressive prosecution. But it's true. Just
what about the taxes?
I have one statement.
What about the insurrection that Donald Trump incited?
I'm not.
That was never charged with.
What
are we talking about?
One at a time, please.
I'm telling you all, look at the number of people who are charged for the filing offense that is charged here. And it just, the simple fact is.
Biden.
If I had Scott,
one statement and one question.
Yeah.
The statement is, I know that people are saying, and look, and I'm a father as well. I get it. You know, we want to protect our children as much as possible. And if we were in the same position, we may think the same way. That said, the argument is, oh, it's a trumped up charge. It's a gun charge. Hold on a second.
Yeah.
There are numerous other things there. And if it was just the gun charge, it wouldn't be a blanket, unconditional pardon that goes back 11 years for anything. That's almost unprecedented. I don't know.
No, it is. No.
Hold on, but
I agree, and I'm going to agree with you because it's so almost unprecedented. It puts President Biden in the camp of President Nixon I'm serious, Scott.
I agree with you.
By issuing a blanket pardon. Now, why? as a practical matter, why the pardon was structured that way is because there's uncharged conduct that is still being investigated, and he could potentially be charged with it. Now, I'm not saying it's right. I'm just telling you that's why they did it.
It's an admission of guilt.
No, they're going to comb through his life with a fine-tooth comb to make him into an example because he's Hunter Biden. And Joe Biden is saying, you know what? That's enough. We've done enough. You're going to look 11 years back into his life. You're going to look into his future. You're going to make sure that you ruin the life of my last and only son. And we have to remember, can I just say, we have to remember that Trump's pardon list from his last administration when he was leaving office included literal bank robbers, drug dealers, embezzlers, murderers. You can go to justice.gov and see all the people that Trump...
Let me ask you this, Scott, because this is a fair point. Donald Trump pardoned Paul Manafort, Roger Stone, George Papadopoulos, Steve Bannon, Michael Flynn. Joe Biden's also not the first person to pardon a family member. Hunter Biden, Charles Kushner. Donald Trump did that one too. Roger Clinton was pardoned, President Clinton's half-brother. Emily Todd Helm, Abraham Lincoln's wife's half-sister, was pardoned. So are we saying we have a problem with all of those things?
How many of the Trump children that we were told are corrupt needed pardons? Zero.
Scott, no one looked into them, Scott.
To your point, Scott,
$2 billion from the Saudis.
The Trump children did not face federal charges. To your point, I'm going to give you that. But the person on here, Charles Kushner, who was convicted for a crime.
Did he go to jail?
Yes, he was living in Alabama prison.
He served time?
But he was he was in prison. They're completely different crimes.
It strikes me that one of the arguments against you
didn't answer the question.
He's literally moved from a jail cell in Alabama to a...
They're not equivalent. They're not equivalent in any way, shape, or form.
Please.
But you're bringing up an issue, and you brought it up, so I want to address it. This idea that Hunter Biden is being selectively prosecuted. Now, one of the core criticisms of the Republicans, and Trump specifically, engaging in selective prosecution investigations of Republicans. And today, what I hear Democrats saying is, you know what, you're right. Joe Biden's DOJ does engage in selective prosecutions, which is exactly why we need people to come in and clean it out now. There seems to be bipartisan consensus.
But
selective prosecutions.
Does it open that door, Congressman?
What door? I'm sorry.
The door to say, well, there is corruption in the DOJ. Let's clean it out.
That's what he argues.
Because, I think that's the issue with saying there's corruption, there's a witch hunt happening, and it's only directed at the president's son.
There's corruption at every level of government in this country. That truth is the truth that led to someone like Donald Trump winning his election. But we have to deal with it honestly and openly.
You're saying he wasn't fairly elected?
Not this tit for tat, back and forth nonsense where we're using hyperbole. And I even started this conversation with a little hyperbole myself. This is why people turn the channel and disengage from politics. This is why tens of millions of people stay home and we get the wrong person in the White House like Donald Trump. No, because of governments that have a history of corruption, have big corporations and oligarchy controlling how things work at every level of government. Our government isn't working for the people. That is the major problem. And we're having conversations like this instead of talking about
wouldn't the intellectually honest way to approach this be, if you're on the left, that when the justice system runs its course, we respect that outcome. We respect that outcome when it happens to Donald Trump. We respect that outcome when it happens to Hunter Biden. Isn't that the correct answer here?
That would be the correct answer if that's how things were working. We saw Donald Trump in court a lot this year, and he was able to push his trials, his sentencing, his actual cases. His cases were dismissed by justices that he had put into position. So we have watched the justice system not work properly. What we're talking about right now with Hunter is what's going to happen to Hunter in the Donald Trump administration, the second Donald Trump administration. I believe if Kamala Harris had won, Donald Trump or Joe Biden would never have pardoned his son. I think he would have believed in the faith of the Justice Department. But I do not believe he thinks that it's going to work under the next Trump administration because they are showing us with the people they are putting in charge that they are not planning to follow the law. It is not planning to be normal. People like Kash Patel in charge, that's going to be the problem. And I think that's what he's saying. The rules have changed because they're changing the rules of the game as they play.
And to me, that's all the more reason why President Biden should have just ducked the question over the last 6 months over what he was going to do with this pardon. If it was subject to making a decision based on who was going to be the next president of the United States, then he should have just not answered the question when asked directly, do you intend to pardon your son? There were countless ways he could have answered simply by saying, well, I'm just out looking out for the American people.
But why would he have answered?
What do you mean?
Why would he have given such an oddly specific denial numerous times? What could it have possibly been?
Scott, I have no idea. All
politics, corruption, partisanship, grifting. That's the answer.
Would it have been corrupt in your mind if Biden had just said, "Yeah, I'm going to pardon myself"?
Yes. Here's the thing. He had two choices. He could have done it and hate me if you want, but I'm doing it. Or he could have done it.
But I still Alexander Hamilton for writing this into the Constitution.
I'm just saying new context.
Hold on.
What's the new context?
I don't.
President Trump had.
All right, go ahead.
That's the new context.
That's a nice story, but it has nothing to do with what we're talking about. Just today, especially the allegations in President Biden saying that it's a political witch hunt. He said there's a case. He came out and said that today. In my opinion, like I said, I'm a file. Hold on a second.
You don't change your perspective based on new context?
From your side of the aisle, come on this program, not this program, excuse me, on CNN, this network, on many, many times saying he's not going to do it. He's not going to do it. And they look pretty bad today.
Okay.
Of course.
And
I think, let me just finish that point. One of the biggest things that this does, the country is already, and you mentioned a little bit of this, the country's already skeptical of the integrity of government. And all this does is undermine it even more.
Okay. I sort of take that point. I mean, here's critique about how President Biden did this. I think the idea of what has really changed. I mean, haven't we known already who would go after Trump's political enemies, who would go after the so-called deep state? That was a known thing. So really changed.
I think you're conflating
We've already known that.
Retribution with accountability. That's what you're conflating here. That's what continues to be conflated.
I'm just saying, Scott, is seeing it from, Congressman Bowman's perspective. If the concern is all these people are going to go after Hunter Biden, it was a known thing that could happen if Donald Trump was elected. Nothing has changed.
Can I ask a question? Do you all think that Merrick Garland should be fired because of this corruption at the DOJ?
Again, I don't think there's corruption at the DOJ. I think the concern is the future DOJ is going to be corrupted.
You think there's corruption there? You think this was a politicized witch hunt? But
Biden.
But wouldn't you, if you were the president, would you believe the attorney?
What you said
there was corruption?
I'm not talking about corruption at the Justice Department. Never charged. Hunter Biden.
I think that is an unassailable fact. Well, pardon me. I know it is an unassailable fact that hundreds of thousands of people misrepresent information on gun applications
why didn't
and
he
are
just
not
pardon him
charged.
just for that?
How many individuals?
You're the expert here, right? Why wouldn't he just pardon him just for that then?
The question was, how legitimate are the charges? It is unlawful conduct. We can all agree to that. He was convicted, duly convicted. However, I have a hard time seeing how that gun charge would have been brought were he not Hunter Biden. Just look at the data and look at the numbers. Now, two things can be true at the same time, that it is not likely that an individual would have been charged were it not a high-profile case, and it's still unlawful conduct that is worthy of a pardon. So there's a lot going on here, and it's a perfectly lawful.
What are your thoughts, though? What are your thoughts on my question?
Which one?
Okay, if let's say, for example, it's a witch hunt, and let's give you that.
I don't like the term.
Hold on a second. Let's say he would not have been prosecuted if it wasn't Hunter Biden for that specific charge.
Yes.
Why wasn't he just pardoned for that then? Why did the pardon go
the answer.
Completely back to 2000?
You know the answer.
No, I don't.
Because the Trump administration is
I'd
going
like to hear from you.
I told you.
I'll answer first and then we'll go to him. The Trump administration is going to comb through every aspect of Hunter Biden's life.
They've already done
that. For 11
years,
years, 20 years.
Has already done that.
And they're going to attack the Biden name, by extension, attack the Democratic Party to keep themselves and others like them in power in perpetuity.
Okay,
that's why.
No, Congressman's not going to like my answer. It's what I said a little bit earlier.
I'd like to hear it from your expert legal opinion.
I appreciate you respecting. No, it's the Richard Nixon point, which is that there is uncharged conduct that could still be investigated. That because of the fact the Justice Department is still looking at it,
and Biden knows it, right? Which is why he made it from 2000.
But we knows the date.
But we can't dig through Donald Trump because he's the president. So he's been pardoned already by the Supreme Court.
Or you could say by the American people.
American People Party.
Everyone, stick around. Coming up next.